So the next question is, what is a variable? And we just talked about IDE. Everybody knows what IDE is by now. So what is a variable? Who wants to answer this question? I'll let Anika do it because your answer is pretty extensive.
I did 10 responses in this. This one is not mine.
Yeah, I know. But you know what you wrote, right?
Oh.
Okay, so you can just go ahead and tell us what is okay. What did you understand by IDE? Like this is, you don't have to read it, right? I'm just saying your understanding, period, right? So we can just go ahead and talk about what did you understand by what is a variable.
So variable to me is like when we in IDE, when we use like we label and to store data in memory. So basically the int and then float, string, then scanner, like all of this stuff. These are like variables, the one that we can use, like, you know, the color coding and stuff. Like those are the variables. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to say what is a variable?
The way I think of it, it's something that could be changed by another constant, or it's like dependent on something else.
Yeah, it could be dependent on something else. It could be also like a constant. It could be also a value that you want to use later. So a variable is a container. It's like a namespace, right? A name where you can say, hey, here is this specific name, and I would like to store temporarily a value of this, right? So now later you'll be able to call that value. The reason why we make use of a variable is because reusability. So number one reason is that reusability. So if you know you're going to need something again and again, put it into a variable. And then you call it whenever you need it instead of rewriting that same line of code again and again and again. Okay. So why is there a need for efficiency on writing when you write code, guys? Why is there a need efficiency? Like variable is something that will make you more efficient, but it is almost essential to any programming language for you to be able to create an interactive program. Variable is almost, you cannot actually avoid it. All right. So, and so basically that's why I guess this will be one of the questions that for you to not to get confused with, you will be able to create different kind of variable, Boolean, names, integer, array, you know, and then there's many more, right? And we talked about all of those data types that you can create. You can create an array of variables. You can create a hash map of variables. And we're going to go into those data structure later in the class. But the purpose of that is that you can actually, you know, use those variables to your program, but you can temporarily say, okay, I want this data to be here for now, right? So it will occupy a memory space or memory location in your computer. So that way you can later reuse it. So a lot of good answers, guys. And you guys got the respective, you know, grade based on your answers. If it's like just a simple line, obviously, you know, so as simple as this one, value contains that can change depending on condition or data passed to the program. So this doesn't say the whole story because that is entirely not, I guess that is not the entire answer, right? So that's why you were taking down some points. Then you have the other one right here. Variable is like a storage box, information using them. So even though you got it, you know, you wrote it in your own way, that's great, but that is not the full story about variable. All right. So just keep that in mind. Again, we have to be mindful about people that do more extensive research and they end up getting a little bit better grade. That's fine as long as you know you got what it is. We're still gonna be okay with it. The key word here is that do your homework, period, right? Even if you feel like, okay, you know what, I didn't do well, that's totally fine. Just do your homework. We want to see you guys trying, right? If you didn't try, that just means that, okay, if you can't push yourself, then we tried. You know what I'm saying? We did what we can. Unfortunately, you know, we're not going to be able to, you know, piss you off by pushing you too much, right? We don't want to do that, right? We don't want nobody getting pissed off to say, okay, this guy's, he doesn't know we have a personal life, right? And I totally get it, but you're still in a class where literally in 2 months you're going to get a job, or the next 3 months. I think we passed already a month, right? So when we finish manual testing, so literally in 2 to 3 months, I would say in 2 months, at least 2 or 3 of you guys are going to get a job from here, and the remaining of you guys are going to be running light speed after that, because you just realized from our previous batches is there are a few people literally get jobs last week, and then I'm getting people reaching out to me, right? Recently, like, oh, I would like to restore. I'd like to basically redo this because I was this and I was that. But there is no need for that. Even if you have hard time in life, just this is just 2 or 3 hours a day. Just keep this on the side, because if you do on and off, like my recommendation that I don't like to do is that if somebody's doing on and off, like, okay, I'm gonna come in here today and then, okay, you know what, I'm gonna come back another 2 weeks later. I try to avoid that kind of situation by either disconnecting with that person, because that just tells me that this is your side plan. This is not a main plan. If this is not your main plan, that's where I have problem, because this has to be, you're getting 95 to 120 easily on your first job. Why this cannot be your main plan? I don't understand, right? But most importantly, you're getting a status. People are calling you engineers in your team. Your boss is going to say, okay, my engineers are working on this or that, and they're giving you proper respect. And most importantly, you also learning something new. You prove yourself that, yes, I did this, or I'm doing it. So why not make this into the main, this is your main plan. Everything else should be a side plan. So just keep that in mind, guys. Everybody's here to help. But when we realize somebody's not trying, that's totally fine. You could be the rabbit. It still doesn't matter. I have really smart people. Another story, guys. Like I said, I'm gonna tell you guys some stories and stuff, but like I said, we're gonna be learning from it. So another story is that somebody literally graduated from Harvard, okay? And not with computer science, but they know programming because they did economics and things like that. So the first thing I did, I said, okay, let's start helping you. Prepared the person, got him ready, put him on the market, and then on and off. So a year later, he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't follow up and this and that. I'd like to try now. And a year later is because his brother-in-law got a job from me, right? So he's like, okay, now I'm gonna try. And I met him in a party too, and I said, listen, why don't you just get back? Because I hate to see smart people, like, especially went to Harvard and got his degree and all that stuff, and he's still wasting his talent. So then he came back, and I think last week he got 3 offers. We're actually going with 2 jobs. So right now, because it's remote, right? So the third one, he's gonna pass it on to somebody else, probably. His brother-in-law is interested to do it. So he's gonna try to work with the recruiter to see if they can, switch. But most importantly, he's gonna go with 2 jobs. Then both of them are over 100. So that's 200 plus. I don't want to basically even say this, but right now it's remote. So both of them are contracts. So he's not really, he can legally actually work on 2 with his contract. So so just keep in mind, if you're working on full time, you might not be able to do 2 or 3 jobs, but you, on your personal time, whatever you do, it's really up to you when you work on a contract job. And especially if you're doing your work. So I said, okay, give it a try, but if it's too much, just let go of one. So he'll probably down the line let go of one at some point. But I think the idea right now is to see which one he likes the most. So he's gonna start, and he's gonna just leave one within the first couple of weeks, and then just focus on one. But this just shows that it just you could be the smartest person in the world, and that person that I'm talking about, if I get a chance, maybe next class, I'm going to ask him to come in and give us a small, speech to say what was his journey like, right, with us. But most importantly, that person, if you speak to him, that he's smart. He's probably gifted, right? But he was really close to waste, almost, close to waste his talent, right? But at least he was fortunate enough to have somebody in the family who got a job, and then that pulled him back in the right track. It took him, I think, 3 weeks to get these offers after he came back to us. So, and he got the offer recently, which means massive layoff from different tech companies. Really didn't affect him getting a job. So just keep that in mind, guys. And it's like I said, it's not that difficult. We're gonna be finished before you even know it. We're gonna be done. It's gonna be painless. But just follow the process. Like, don't pile your work. Don't try to do everything at the same time. And that's where you're gonna feel like, oh, this guy is giving us too much. We're not giving you too much. It's just that you're doing it at the last minute. Okay. Okay, so variable, everybody's clear. Okay, Boolean. Boolean is true or false. I can just go over some of the responses here. Some of you guys write really extensive. So again, and some of you guys wrote one-liner, and that's totally fine. You still got close to the actual grade. Boolean will be true and false, and this one like definitely needs an example. Okay, so it's a data type with 2 possible values, either true or false. This is correct. You're absolutely right, but obviously, as you see, a little bit more details will not hurt you, right? Just so don't be cheap, just talk a little bit more. We want to know what you're really thinking about these topics, right? Now, if you go out there online, you will never see these questions, or some of the places you're probably not going to find this question is because why? I sit down and I see what I covered, and then I write it, I create this homework, and I then have to give it to you. So this has to be made after the class and then giving it to you. So remember, I spent another 2 hours after your class. Think about it, all right? So I would expect the same level of, commitment here, guys. I'm committed. I'm fully committed, all right? Some of you guys reach out to me during, my work days. I try to reach back and I try to talk to you guys. It's because I'm committed. I want to make sure that I want to do as much as I can do to make sure that your motivation is still intact and still on the right page. We're still on the right track, because it is a lengthy class of 6 months. And after some time, you feel like, oh man, I don't think I can do this, right? So we don't want that. And that's why I tell you guys a lot of stories to keep your motivation alive, that there is that thing is waiting for you. There's a lot of, good things are waiting for you toward end of this class, okay? All right, so then the next question, so Boolean is just true or false, right? Where do you use Boolean? Okay, so tell me in a program where you can use Boolean.
When there are conditions.
Yeah, you can actually use on the condition side. So for example, let's say if customer provided, let's say first name, last name, and date of birth, only then give them something in return. If they didn't provide them, tell them we need first name, last name, and third. So now if you say first name, last name, if it's there, that means you're comparing, you're saying equal to something. Now the response to that, the program will only give you true or false, the Boolean result. It will always return a Boolean result. So now you have to then use Boolean in this case, right? So for example here, what is the outcome of this, right? This one, what is the whole outcome? So we are saying I modulos 2, so I remainder of 2, if is equal to 0, right? So if this iteration, the first time, if it goes through 0, right, it has no remainder because it's 0, right? So if it goes through 1, it will have some remainder. If it does 2, it will not have a remainder. If it does 3, it will have a remainder. So now if it does have equal to 0, it will be true, therefore it will execute this, right? If it doesn't have it, then it will execute this, is because if this is not true, then what else can it be? There is no guessing. If it's not true, what else can it be? It's going to be false. So that's why we don't have to put false here, because we already know the opposite of true is false. And that's it. There is no maybe. There is no like gray area in a Boolean. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, now let's go into the main method. Main method, we talked about public static void main. I want to see some of your responses. You know, because it's good to see some of you guys actually come up with a really extensive answer. So like, for example, this one, very extensive. Then we have other extensive answers also, like even this one is close to perfect score. So let's see, need more details. Okay, let's see, it says string, the starting point of executing code. This code is the hello world program. So this is really, I mean, you got 3, and I think I would probably give it 0 because it really doesn't answer the question. You know, starting point, yes, but then what it is, you know, we're talking about, it has some keywords like public static void main, right? So you can actually understand what this keyword is. You can actually modify some of this keyword. Can you modify? That's the question, and things like that. You can explain what public means, right? So some of you guys actually did fairly good job, and you got perfect scores because you did take your time about this, you know, question. So we can clearly see like when you did the homework and versus your response. So the correlation between when you did the homework, if you do early, somehow is always best answer, guys. So I'm giving you this analytics so you can actually improve yourself, right? Somehow, if you do the homework early, you do really pretty good job on your homework and you get close to 100 or even perfect score. And some of you guys actually did get, you know, more than 100 because you shown that you basically know what you're talking about. And that's through research, because nobody here had prior knowledge. So it's totally fine. You just have to read, understand it, and then, you know, present us with the answer. Okay, so that was your second question. So main method is, again, in Java, you will see main method is everywhere, right? So whenever you write code and you want to execute, you will see main method. Main method has to be there one way or another way. So sometime when we use framework, main method is built in to the framework. So you don't have to call main method because it's already built in. So you're going to see those syntax and code, and you may have question, how come there is no main method? It's because it's already built in. We don't have to do it. So we'll talk about those, but main method in Java is necessary. Public means this can be accessed from anywhere. You know, void means it has no return. And we got the static, so static keyword. Let me see, what was your answer? Some of you guys actually broke it down to that level, right? So string. Yeah, main method is starting point. Okay, I'll just read one of your answer here because you know, I do think that your research has a lot of value. So when you learn Java programming, the first thing is you want to do is learn main method. This is the main method that your Java program calls when you try to run it. The main method is placed when you can put code to execute other methods or calls other methods. Method. Okay, so let's learn. Okay, let's learn what each of the component means. Okay, remember the syntax means is always public class, public static void main. So first of all, main method of the application needs to be public so that the Java runtime environment JRE can access and execute, right? If a method isn't public, then it can only be accessed by people who are authenticated by the system. So if the main method does not have the public access modifier, then you will get an error after running the program. Then the main method, so you can actually put private and see what really happens, right? Then main method has to be static. So JVM can load the class into memory. If it's not static, it will not load it. So, and then void makes sure that there is no return of that object, right? And then we have string arguments is Java command like line argument, and system out println is just the argument for printing anything that you want to print, right? So this is like a method for printing. So this is pretty well explained. So is the other ones. I'm not going to read every single one of them. We still have to go through our today's topic. And the last one. So last one, let's see who actually. So this is one. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and open up some of the screenshots. Okay, so this is one, and you did pretty well. I mean, you did just more than that, right? More than what I asked. So this is, well, I mean, I would say more appreciated because you not only were asked to write a single line to print something, but you decided to do more than that. So that's really, really appreciated. And I would, some of you guys, if you do have the time, we appreciate if you do a little bit extra, right? That shows that not only that you understand, but also you want to go beyond what we are asking. A programmer cannot be just stay within the box. You want to get out of that and do a little bit more. So these, whatever you did, perfect. You also did the same about your hello world. That's totally fine. Okay, that's the second. Same thing, looks good to me. And make sure it runs, right? Anybody here that you ran your code and somehow it didn't work? This is also fine. Syntax looks good. Anybody here that has code that doesn't run, guys? Because we're gonna write something today. So this is Anika. So you did not only that you did the hello world, you did the entire class that we did. So one thing that I'll tell you, like when you did do these things, you actually doing yourself a favor because programming you cannot learn by looking at it. You cannot learn by looking at it. Mark my word. Mark my word. You will know within the next 2 years once you go out there, get a job, and then you're gonna say, "Wow, I don't know anything." It's gonna take you 1.5 years to get comfortable with programming, but here we're just making you just comfortable, just enough to go out there and be able to get a job, right? But we cannot prepare you to be a programmer. Otherwise, everybody is gonna be, it's gonna be full-fledged, and we would not have issue placing you guys, right? But we teach you just enough. Okay, so just keep that in mind and your expectation. But if you want to go beyond that, that's a lot of favor to yourself. You're feeding yourself, right? This is another example. It's crazy, right? You ended up doing even extra, more than what we even did in the class. So that's great. Yeah. Sajad, right? Okay,
Yeah.
Evelina, this is yours. That's great. Piece of advice: start learning how to take screenshots from the computer itself, because when you write a bug and you take a picture with your phone, it's not gonna look good.
I have issues. I have to figure it out.
Figure
I'll work
it out.
on it.
Okay, no problem. This is also good, guys. So, really, like I said, Saif, you made it up to this much, tells me that, you, like I said, you did fine. All you gotta, do is that instead of doing it, maybe last day or something, try to do it early, because that way you can do a little bit more. You could have wrote a little bit more, right? So you just did enough for you to finish the homework. But again, like I said, if you do extra, that's a huge favor to yourself. Okay, and then I'm sure you deserve that, right? All right, so let's go to W3, and we'll start from today's topic and where we left off. And just keep in mind, all of this topic needs to be covered, guys, sooner or later. So if you'll see me like going up to this much, and all of a sudden we're talking about something, maybe like a story, that's totally fine. We're just gonna pick up from where we left off. But motivation is really, really important, aside from just me going through and really just speeding through those topics, right? So today's class is going to be, we talked about the operators, and we actually did some operations last time. Operators is basically, and I think we flew through it, right? So operation is nothing more than just being able to do math, right? So one thing that Java will tell you is you cannot operate with different types. You have to be able to convert. So if you have integer as a operator, for example, this is the integer, right? and this is the integer because they're a whole number. Now, you are doing sum of those two numbers. If one of them were, let's say 50 had 50.1 or something, a decimal, that is not a integer anymore. That could be a double, right? And now Java will come back and say, no, I can't, I can't do this operation. You have two different type of data types, right? Java cannot deal with two different data types. So now what do you do is that you round it up to the nearest tenth and then go ahead and make it in a whole number and then do the operation, or you convert this into a double, because then you don't have to do nothing with this, rounding up. I think rounding up is probably the bad option, because now you're always going to have inaccurate result. You should probably convert that into a double instead. So now you can do it still. You can still add. So it's going to be, if it's 50.1 plus 100 is going to be 150.1, which is much better than saying 150, because you decided to remove 0.1, any decimals that is not nearest 10th or something. So just keep in mind, the conversion that you're doing is according to your needs. So sometime when you do calculations, let's say 30 years mortgage, the percentage matters. And you said, okay, the client got a percentage of 1.2 or maybe 3.1. And you said, okay, 1 doesn't matter. I want to use integer, and you remove the 1. Now the 30 years interest rate has significant, effect, right? Now you can see they're like $50,000 less than what they're supposed to pay. So if you work for that bank, you just costing the bank millions, if not billions of dollars, because now your calculation is wrong. And I'm not talking about developers. So I'm not talking about like QA. So if you're a developer, for example, and you did this kind of math and you put that into your program, you costed the company billions of dollars, period. Because now the company is not able to get anything beyond the whole number. So if somebody has 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, whatever's the case, those numbers are going to be gone. And there's this tiny difference. Even if they fail to collect $50,000 per client, that's a lot of money, So you have to choose what you need. And Java is giving you all these tools that are available. So these are basics. Again, these are fundamentals of programming in Java. So we want to make sure that we're good with fundamentals so we can do some advanced stuff right here, right? So just keep that in mind. Operators, I think here in plus, minus, and then we're talking about the multiplications and division, modulos, plus, and minus. We already worked with plus in few examples last time, but I'll give you guys more idea about this. But except for modulos, I think everything else is basic math, basic standard of math. So we'll do them. We'll do them as we go with the example, but just keep that in mind. These are the operators, arithmetic operators, basically, that you can use.
I think the modulus one is so confusing.
Modulus, you ever, I guess, like if you did the math class in, I don't know, college or high school, wherever they cover like remainder, how many people remember that?
I mean, I remember remainders. I just don't know what it has to do with code,
Yeah, so basically what it does, it gives you remainder of dividing with whatever number you want to divide with, right? The idea is that in code, like imagine like the example with odd and even, right? You want to find all the even numbers. So what other ways can you solve that problem, right? We did this last class. So let's say modulus is out of the question. What other ways can you give me all the odd numbers, so even numbers? So this program gives me even numbers, right? So let's think about like what I'm trying to say is that how modulo is helpful, right? So now if you think about alternative solution to using modulos, you're gonna have to say, you're gonna basically now have to use divide probably, right? Yeah, you'll have to use divide, and then you have to see the value of that. If you divide it by, let's say 2, a number, right? So there's going to be a lot of complexity there, right? So now you have to think about what happens when you divide a number with 2, for example. So if you divide 50 by 2, that's 25. So you're going to say, okay, if it does have anything other than 0, then obviously that is a even number. But then now you have to really think about what numbers you're dividing with, right? So what happens if you divide zeros with 2? Who knows that this answer?
It'd be 0.
So then what? So 0 becomes even at this point, right? And then so it will return 0. So just like modulo. So there is alternative to that, but then you have to think. I guess like division is going to be opposite of what modulus, but in this case, like you can come up with other alternative solution. For example, you know your numbers, right? It's going to be up to 100. So you can collect those numbers and you can say, I want the second options. Move on, skip the first one, go to the second options. Move on, skip the first one, go to the second options. Now you are ambiguous at this point. You are guessing. You're making a hypothesis that every second number after the first number is going to be odd, and every number after, like, okay, let's say every number after 1 is going to be skipping one number will be even number. Is that a good way to do it, right? You know, it's probably not a good way, because in a practical life you will really cause a real big problems in your program, because it's not really also doing the math. It's just, you're just saying the second option after the first option is an even number, I'm guessing, because that's how a number works. Okay, so there are other alternative solution to modulos, but modulos comes handy because it just simply tells you the remainder, and then you can make a choice and a decision, right? You can actually make a decision after that. So just keep that in mind. So I would say get comfortable with modulos, because a lot of programming challenges, you will be able to, instead of writing 2 or 3 lines of code, you can actually solve it with a single line because of modulos, right? Okay, so let's talk about the string, guys. And I think string was one of the question, or even if it's not, then we'll talk about it, because the string has a lot of usage, and we did that in the last class. For example, a string variable contains a collection of characters. So more than one character, it could be a single, it could be more, right? They're not saying it's limited to 1 or limited to 2. They're not saying it's limited to 3. Now, in this string characters, as long as it's surrounded by double quote, it is a string. And this is how we declare a string variable in Java. Okay, so let's take this in our program real quick. And today's class, I'm just going to create a new Java class. Okay, lesson 2. And then we have to do public void static main string args, right? Just going to be lazy now. Just going to copy that. And we're going to continue to build a lot of coding challenge here. So that way, when you do an interview and they give you a coding challenge, you'll be like, oh, okay, I'll do this. And 2 minutes later, your answer is right there. You solved it. And whoever's taking your interview, like, oh, wow, that's crazy. And you'd be able to actually explain, because you already did this before. So we're going to try to cover as much as coding challenges as possible they ask in the interviews. And now, if they do ask beyond that, it's okay. We can miss some interviews. We can actually fail some interviews. That's not a problem. But those that will ask relevant questions, we're going to be able to answer, and we'll be able to ace the interview. Okay, so string. So we're saying we're building a string variable. And this is one of the example for building string variables. So string greeting is hello, right? And in this specific string, so what we see is that we're setting a value. So we see a single equal. So by now, you already know the difference between single versus double, right? Anybody wants to, anybody wants to try this first before I go and explain to you guys?
Hi, sorry, I have a question. So how do you create this folder, like Java, where you put all the lessons and stuff? How did you create that folder?
This folder is by default, right? So when you yeah, when you click new project, and then you select Java and Maven. Maven is a tool that allows you to, so basically Maven already knows, right? You're about to build a Java program or project, whatever is the case, and it gives you some basic, structure as a project, right? Or you can just build everything from scratch, empty project. So, we chose Maven because at least we get some basic structure to start with, and it gives you the Java folder where you can actually, so after test Java, and then this is where you can actually start to write your code. The other thing is we're going to cover Maven shortly after, but Maven is part of our automation test. So this is what we're going to cover. But so right now, don't worry about what this is. We're going to explain what this is later.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now string, guys. So there's many things we can do with string. So what if you have a second string? And like, for example, let's say name, right? So greeting, hello, something, and then name is John, right? So hello, John, right? So now if you want to combine both, right, you don't have to just rewrite them again and again, right? You have to be able to combine the string. So just like that, string has a lot of operation that you can do within, and you need to be able to do it because you can do some math. So for example, the first coding challenge, maybe, okay, we'll do the coding challenge at the end, but the first thing first is that Java gives you a method called length. The return type of length is a whole number. What is that? What data type is that? If it's a whole number.
Int.
Integer, int, right? So if you apply length to your string, it will give you a whole number back. What is that number representing? So let's go ahead and apply something, like we'll just go ahead and do the length. And then let's print this out, right? So we can see what happens. But before I print it out, somebody give me an educated guess. The number, so it gives you certain numbers, right? We already agreed that it gives you integer value and it gives you a number in return. So what is that number representing? Is that a number to tell you like, oh, okay, this is the memory location, or this number tells you like your computer, serial number? What is the number representing, guys? Educated guess, okay?
The length.
The length of, sorry, you want to explain?
No, sorry.
Okay. So the logical, or at least like, guesses that you guys can make. And again, like I said, the reason I said make guess, it's fine. It makes it more interesting, right? For us, because now you're interacting and I'm interacting. So you don't have to just listen and kind of, struggle to stay awake. It's better to communicate. So you'll also have fun doing the class. So now this string, if we use length, what it does, it counts how many characters there is. So let's do a count. H is 1, E is 2, L is 3, another L is 4, and then it's 5. So we're expecting a 5. So if I run this code, okay. And then the other question that I was asking you guys, because you can see 5. What is the use case of this? So this method, since it gives you 5, where can you use this number to do something crazy, right? To do something that you want. There's a lot of use case to the length, right? So for example, this hello is coming from the customer themselves, for example, in your program. So you can say hello, and then somehow they returned nothing. Like they entered no names, right? For example, let's say world, whatever. So world has no return. So the customer has nothing in return. So you take the world.length and let's run it. And it is 0. So if you then say, okay, if it's 0, then do something else. If it's 0, then don't let them in. Don't let them into the next page and tell them you forgot your name. You see one use case? Make sense, right? All right. The other question that I was asking you guys is that single equal and double equal. By now, you guys should be able to at least give me an educated guess, because some of you guys already used it. In the meantime, I'm going to go into the next methods of string, right? So there is a lot of things you can do with string that we want to cover. But what do you guys think about the single and double equal?
One is equal to a number, like total, and the other one is, I guess, assumption.
Now, so single equal is assignment, right? So you have your variable and you're saying my variable world has some value that I would like to store, and the value is nothing. Okay. My value of name, sorry, my variable name, which is a string type, and I would like to store this value, right? So single equal is always going to be an assignment. And this is true for any programming language. C++, which is close to machine language, even that has equal, right? So equal is going to be mostly for assignments. Double equal in Java is to compare, to say, okay, if this is equal to 0, right? But you have to be careful because in Java, they also have another one, right? If you want to compare, there is another one is called dot equal. And dot equals basically has another use case, right? So double equal and the dot equals have the difference, right? So you will probably be more safe using equals, because double equal, not only that it compares the value, it also compares the memory location, right? So where is it stored? If it's not the same place that is stored, then it will give you a false result. It will say false. It is designed to do that. So you have to know exactly when to use this guy and this guy, right? So we'll go ahead and use that in the future, so you'll get more clarification, but just know a little bit of heads up, right, in advance. So now that we know how to use dot length in our string, we can see the difference, right? We can say, you know what, I would like to use this to basically take one character at a time from my string and do a reverse if you want to reverse your name or something, right? Or you can say, you know what, I'll use dot length to determine how many characters, and I can tell them, okay, your name has 5 digits, your name is 6 digits, and then based on their names you can do certain things, right? You can actually make certain decisions in your program. That's how length is being used. You can also use loop. You can say you want to do something for each character, right? You want to do something for each character, so you can use a loop to do that. So let's talk about the next one, right? So the next one is that after the length, we're talking about uppercase and lowercase, right? And since we're dealing with string, we can actually make them uppercase and lowercase, and there is 2 methods for it, right? So it's got 2 uppercase and 2 lowercase. So if I do this, I'm going to take this as a copy so it's easier for me. I'll put it in here, and let's say I want John, which is the name, to be uppercase, and I want the hello to be lowercase, right? All lowercase, and H is, you can see H is already uppercase with H, right? So if I go ahead and run this, you can see, oh, sorry, do both is uppercase? Never mind, I will have to do lowercase to the, okay. All right, so you can see hello is lowercase, even though H is right there. And then John is uppercase. Why do we do that? Why do we do uppercase and lowercase? Is that in the real world, a customer can type everything in uppercase or lowercase. We don't know that. So what we can do, we can take that value and always convert it into lowercase before we do rest of the work. So what's going to happen is that we know the data is being cleaned before even working with it. So we can expect that our string is always going to be lowercase because we are going to convert it into lowercase, right? Everything is going to be lowercase or uppercase, whatever is the case, right? So just keep that in mind. You can go after this class and create a program that will make everything uppercase in your essay. So it's simply is that, right? So you can write an essay, you can say, okay, I want everything uppercase, put the essay in here, and now it will make it uppercase, right? So That's how these two methods are working. So in Java, one thing that I want to also signify is that just like length, just like to uppercase, there is a lot of method, right? That people wrote 6 pages worth of code, and they gave it a name. And the name is, for example, length. That is a method. So somebody had to write this code very early. And they said, okay, hey, my code can be used by another developer. So they gave it a nice name and they placed it somewhere here, okay? All those code. So there is hundreds of method are waiting for us to be used. Thousands of methods are waiting for us to be used. In programming language, we don't do everything from scratch. That was the Stone Age, right? The idea is that you don't want to reinvent the wheel again and again and again. So, for example, .length, if I go inside and dig down in the code, I can see how the code looks like. Somebody had to write this code, right? And I can go below the code and see what the method is actually doing. And I'm inside of here now, right? So I'm going to go back. The thing is, those code that was written very early on to make it into a programming language, so that way rest of the population in the world who wants to be a developer can use those methods in their program to not reinvent the wheel, but do what they want to do. It's just that now they don't have to write excessive amount of code to do the same work. All they have to know is that this code is being maintained by a lot of developers in the world because it's open source. So people review this code over and over again. So you know .length is going to work for sure because people test it also. The whole world is actually working on Java to constantly make improvements. It's not just one person or one company. It's an open source project. So even if you find maybe some useful method that will be used by other developers or that can be used by other developers, you can go ahead and push your code to the repository, and I can show you how to do that. And that will be then at least 1,000 people are going to review that code before it can be added to the library. And then people like us, we're going to say, okay, we want to create a Java project and then call JDK, and it will then give us all the code that was basically approved and put into different folders for us to use. Okay. So any programming language, so some of you guys says Python early on, right? And even Python has a more readable method than Java. And that's why I say Python is easy, is because it's more like plain English. It's like, if you can read English and write English, then you can write Python and Ruby. And the reason is because these methods, they wrote it in a very human readable way. The method will do exactly what it says it will do, right? So anytime you're using Java methods, and there's hundreds, if not thousands of them, and anytime you want to use method, you don't want to write this code yourself because it's going to be very, very tedious work, right? Somebody already did it. So all you have to know what the method does for you to move forward with your program. But if you want to know what the method does, if you just hover over IDE, your IDE is going to give you some tips and say, hey, this is going to return the length of the string, length of this string, okay? If you apply it, and the length of the string is equal to a number, and then it will tell you, and then units in the string, and then length is the interface. It's telling you it is an interface, and it basically belongs to this one, Java lang string. So somewhere here, right? Somewhere inside here, Java lang string. We can probably find it. In this folder, the code is there, right? So your IDE is telling you, hey, length, somebody actually did this hard work very early on, and they wrote the code for you, and they put it into a folder, and they put it in here. So now you can use it, right? So your program really have a lot of leverage of previous work. That entire world worked on it at some point. Any confusion? Is that a little bit of clarification in terms of how programming language will help you to be able to write your own program? Nothing is going to be done from scratch. If you were to do everything from scratch, you will go crazy. After all, what's happening is that when you write the code here, it converts that into ones and zeros, right? So there are people back in the days, they would write everything in ones and zeros, but we don't have to. We can just use this method, and then later when I compile and run it, it will actually convert ones and zeros, and then it will tell the machine what to do with only ones and zeros, right? Does that make sense? So what is Java in this case? It's basically just it's a programming language that has a lot of programs pre-written for you in different methods and class and interfaces that you are able to use to make something happen. Okay, so just take everything in a way that it's not a big deal. Yes, everything is created by human. This was created by a lot of humans, right? Just like yourself. And now all you have to do is learn how to use it. That's it. That's how simple it sounds at this point. Okay, so now we learned about the uppercase and lowercase. Now the next thing is, what if you want to locate something? What if you want to find a specific word in your string, right? So there is another method called index of. So you're going to see as time comes by, we're talking about a lot of methods. So we're also going to talk about data structure. And it's because these specific programming languages, they give you this leverage. They say, okay, here, we'll make your life easy, just use this. But you need to know how to use it to write your program. And that's why you're going to be a programmer, because you're going to be a Java developer. Because why? Because you know how to use Java, you know the programs, you know the methods, you know how the data structure works. So you can basically say you are, after all, a Java programmer, right? So let's see. So index of is going to give you a specific number. So how many people know what index means? And obviously I'm going to explain to you guys. So let's say I'm going to write a long string. So long string could be this is awesome. All right. All right. Somebody tell me what I did wrong here. I even put a semicolon. Something is not happening. Red. 5 seconds for you to call out.
Don't you have to put something after string? You didn't like label the string, right?
I didn't even put a name of the string, right? So I gotta say, okay, lesson, for example, unequal. That's it. Now your IDE is nice enough to gray it out because you never use lesson anywhere. You created the string variable, but you didn't use it. The purpose of you creating the variable is because you're gonna use it at some point, right? So that's why the IDE is like, oh man, you didn't use it. So you can actually remove it in your code if you're really not using it. And it's easy decision because your IDE is telling you it's not being used, but it'll be used later in our program. So the next one is index. So now let's say I want to find the position of this character. Explanation. I want to find the position of explanation character, right? So give me a number in it. So, okay, so let me first explain to you guys what is an index value, right? In program, index value starts with 0, okay? So now from here on, just know that index value starts from 0. So for example, H is gonna be 0, right? E is gonna be 1, right? And I'm telling you the position right now. L is gonna be, the first L is gonna be 2, the second L is gonna be 3, and the fourth L is gonna be 4, right? And it's gonna go on and on just like this, right? Any question about index values? This is a location of the characters in your string, and it starts with 0 at all times. That's it, right? You guys need to sink that in. There's nothing else I can say about it, but again, index value is just that, right? It starts with 0 and it's just a position. So when you use value of, specifically if you use index of, right, it gives you a location of your string. So I can say, for example, lesson dot, I want index of right there. And when the other thing actually the IDE is helping me do, if I press this and I say index of, let's say index. So we got so many other recommendations. What do you want to use? So I can see the string integer type return. String, obviously I don't want. So index of the first one is integer, and it's going to give you character it takes a character at this point, and this one takes a string. So somehow both of them have the same name, and we'll talk about it. This is called method overriding. So we're going to learn more about the different methods. So these two methods are same actually, but they have two different parameters. So if you do give this method a character, it will still work. If you give it a string, it will still work, period. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So better off characters, but you know, regardless of which one you choose, it's about you giving what, and it will work with it. You don't have to specify. So I'm going to choose this one, index of character what. So let's say I want, let's see, this is, there's so many E's and everything. Let's say G. I want to find G. Okay, so G is right there. And now I'm going to run it. And I'm going to probably write some program to tell us what it is, index value. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and run it. All right, where am I making mistakes? You see, in any programming language, if you're a programmer, you run your code. After you run your code, it tells you something like this. What do you do after that? Do you panic, or what is the next possible thing I can do to fix this? What is the logical thing that you should do? Right, so if you're using IntelliJ already, the logical thing is that, okay, line number 12 or 64. So line number 12, it says you missed, right? You missed a parenthesis, right? Or we call bracket in Bangladesh. So you missed one of the parentheses. And you can say, if you are a math guy, you will say, okay, this is an opening. And this is an opening, so I expect two closing. And this is just a single closing, right? So you can actually go through your code and fix it, but IDE, which is your IntelliJ, is already giving you the help that you need. Okay, it's telling you exactly where to look instead of missing it. So I'm going to go ahead and run this one more time, and it has this button right here. So rebuilding it. Okay, once it's done. So, all right, build is done, and I'll talk about how the build works, what it is even we're talking about, but let's go ahead and run it. Oh, okay, I messed up, guys. I messed up. Okay. So this guy only takes a character. That's it. Why did I even put all this stuff? So I'm gonna go ahead and take this out. The output of these should be combined with the, you know, with this value, right? So we don't need this, and we don't need this extra. And we don't need the plus here because we already have the plus outside. Okay, let's run it real quick, and then we can see index value is 24. Do you agree with the program? It's got to be 24, because if you start with like 0 here, you can just imagine how many characters after that. Now that you learned two things, you learned how to get the index value, and then you also learn the length. We can actually write a new coding challenge to do
When
something,
you wrote
right?
down
So
the index value in green, it's the same as the index of, correct?
you gotta I guess say it again. What was the question? So
Yeah, so yours says yours is parentheses parentheses index value dot parentheses plus lesson dot. Yours is like reverse of mine, but I got the same answer.
okay.
Well, no, never
Okay.
mind, because mine only says 24. Yours says index value of 24.
Okay.
I just
The value,
copied the. I just copied
no, but the value,
too.
that's fine. The value will be same, but again, like this string is different, right? So it's working with whatever you have, right? Now, if you're talking about this is just a string. We're just printing it. We're doing string concatenation, which we're going to learn in about a second, right? So no matter what sentence this is that you have on your side, you will pretty much and guys, like, okay, let's start following me at the code, right? So everybody open up your IntelliJ and put it on the side. So I was going to ask you guys to follow the coding challenge with me after we finish, after the explanation. So it's good to start right now, and feel free to stop me and say, hey, I'm behind. Okay, just to do that. Everybody's expected to follow this. At the end, when we're done, we're going to screen share. We're going to see how far you are and where you are. Okay, so just make sure you do it now. And if you're stuck or something, then we will share screen and we'll see where you're stuck and fix it, right? Now, in this case, we just learned how to print the index value of a string, right? So the next thing is, okay, so let's go into the string real quick. So I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. This was done, locating. Okay, so this was done. The next one is okay. Somebody knows how to pronounce this. Concatenation, right? Okay, let me just see what Siri says. Okay, concatenation. Okay, I got it. I will not forget again. Concatenation is basically when you use the plus operator to combine two or more, right? Two or more string. Now, it doesn't have to be just string by itself. It could be a variable with the string assignment, string value, right? You can combine this way. So for example, first name, last name, I'll take this code over there to make our life more easy and explain what is that and why we even need this, right? So for example, this case, you got the first name and last name, John Doe, and we're combining using the plus here, but then we're calling the first name, we're calling the last name because they already exist in the system as a variable. And then we're putting a inside, we're putting a character, which is a space, single space, which is still a character, right? So this is still a variable. Sorry, still a string. So we're actually, in reality, we're combining three different strings. First string is this, which is equal to that, and then plus another string, and then plus another string. So if I print this, it's going to be first name with a single space, last name, just like this, is because of this guy. If I don't have this, then it will combine them, right? That's how it works, right? So string okay, I forgot already. Concatenation is basically string concatenation is to combine variables for many, many reasons. So when you write a program, trust me, you're going to be doing this again and again and again. So don't forget string concatenation, and we are able to combine multiple string with that. The other thing you can do, concat method is also can be work. You can actually use toString using the method itself. So rather than just doing first name and last name, you can actually use the method itself. So I can just really do the same thing, right? So first name concat the last name. If I run it this time, it will go ahead and combine, but there is no space. There is no space, and that's the two different use case. So now you have to decide which one to go with, right? Because if you really care about that space, then you have to use the first one, or this one you use if you don't really care about the space. You can even remove the space manually and have the same results. So mostly I've seen people using this more, and this concat method is rarely I have seen in code that developers are using. Sometimes they're not even aware of it because it's such a small thing, and plus it's not highly used. So this is concatenation on the string side. Then we talking about the numbers, right? Numbers and strings. So we already talked about the numbers yesterday, what kind of operation you can do. As long as you have the right data type, you can combine them using plus and all the operation minus and things like that. Now, this example right here that they're talking about, X and Y, 10 is not a number and 20 is not a number. Ask me why. Or tell me why. They're not a number. So if you do plus, it will still, what is the return of this if you do plus? Okay, I'm going to take this. So this is a good example, to be honest, for us to take a look. So somebody give me a good answer here. What is the value of Z? So if I print it out, what will I see? Or do I see an error?
Should be 10, 20 combined, no?
10, 20 combined because they're string. So if I run it, it'll be just combined because obviously
30.
it thinks,
30 will be the
yeah.
answer.
No, but that's exactly what you missed, right? Look at this. Is this a number to you? Is this a number to you? 10 or 20 in this case, is it a number to you with the lens of a programmer?
If it was an integer, then it would be considered a number.
Yeah, it says string on it, so it cannot calculate it.
Yeah, there is two hints you can see here, right? First of all, it's starting with string, right?
And also,
Uh,
it's only one equal sign, right? So if it was two equal sign, it would be
It doesn't
additional.
matter. No. You're very wrong, right? So 2 equal is comparing true or false, right? It has nothing to do with it because here, look, when you create a variable, the only thing makes sense is that when you create a variable is that you would like to put a value to it, right? So you will always use a single equal, period, right? Think about it, because if you create a variable, therefore you are storing something, whether that is a string, whether that is an integer or a character, whatever you want to store, it will be an assignment. You agree, right? You guys agree with me? All right, who disagrees? Okay, so I assume everybody agrees. It will always be an assignment, and therefore it's going to be a single equal. By the way, don't mind if I said I disagree with you or you're very wrong, is because it's just my way of saying, okay, the program is wrong. So it's not personal. Now, like I said, if you did double equal here, immediately your ID is telling you, hey, I see a problem here, because you cannot just assign a value using double equal. You're not able to. You can't, right? It's just a comparison. If you do double equal, that's a comparison. You're comparing to say, this is apple and this is apple, or this is orange and this is apple, right? And it'll give you true or false in return. If it's apple and apple, then it will say yes, it's true. If it's orange and apple, it will say false. So some of you guys answered that is going to be 30. It cannot be, right? It cannot really, it cannot really understand what this is, right? This is just a 2 character. That's all the program knows. It doesn't even know if it's 10. It just knows it's 2 characters that it belongs to this double quote, because it only cares about string at this point. It's saying it's a string. I don't know what that's inside. It could be any garbage inside. But for us as a human, we're seeing it's 10 or 20. Oh, wow, okay. But no, this is just a string. So what it does is just that it just combines. Remember what we just did here. It will do exact same operation. But unless it's a number, that's when. So if I do the number operation, I remove this double quotation. Now, what's happening is that Java understands what 10 is and what 20 is as a number. Then it tells you, your IDE is saying, wait a minute, I realize you put number, but then you're calling this number a string. You're wrong, right? So you have 2 choices. You can wrap it, or you can change this to int. Okay, wrap it means you can actually combine these 2. You can actually convert it into a string from a number. That's how the wrapping will work, right? You see, string.value of this method will automatically make it into a string of this number, or we can just say int in the front and we're good to go, right? So if I say int, so now that we combine this into int, z is no longer a string because that's the result, right? So that it has to be int as well. And now this plus becomes a math operation at this point. This is going to be a math. It's going to combine the 2 value. So now if I run it, it's going to be a 30, as you guys guessed it before. Okay, I hope this was clear and crystal clear at this point. The next one is, all right, the next one is something that is like, let's say, the negative test case. You got the 1 as a string and the other as integer. What's going to happen in this case, right? So let's do a guess real quick, educated guess from what we talked about earlier. So instead of X, I'm gonna say A, and I'm gonna change that, and I'm gonna say this is B, and I'm gonna do B because I don't want to say, you see, this is gonna create problems, and this is gonna be your C. So A plus B is equal to C. That's what we're saying. If I go ahead and print C, what's gonna happen, guys? What do you think is gonna happen? How many people think is gonna be an error? And how many people think is gonna be 10 plus 20 together, just like before?
I think it's an error.
Okay, and anybody else? Before I click on run. All right, let's go ahead and run it. Is what, hold on a second. I think what happened here. Did we even print out? Okay, 10 plus 20. So it gives you 10 plus 20. In this case, right? It didn't do the math operation, right? I would also guess it's gonna be an error. Other languages would probably, I mean, Java, as far as my working experience with it, if this was a math operation, it would give you an error. But in this case, it didn't do math operation. It just combined it because it has the string. So it just combined the two value and make it into a single string. Okay, and it gave you 10 plus 20. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This is actually also a interview questions. So let's see the explanation here. Example, if you add two string, the result will be a string concatenation. If you add that, okay, if you add a number and a string, the result will be string concatenation. So it does the massaging itself automatically. Internally, it goes and converts it into a string and just add it just like this one. Okay, so I would also think is a string, considering that Java doesn't like two different data types to be doing math operation. But in this case, if you have a string, it has a choice. The programming language says, okay, you know what? I think you want to do a combine to a string. It's not a math, right? But then if you do a specific math, that's when it's going to give you a problem to say that you're not able to do that, right? It'll give you an error. But in this case, it didn't. It will not give you error. All right, so now let's talk about the special characters in your programs. And this is going to be true for most of the programs, I would say, maybe. So now when you write a program and you have something like this, like somehow you want to put double quotation inside the quotation, because remember, when you create a string, you use double quotation, but then you think that you have to put quotation onto something, because let's say a paragraph, for example. So now, if you have that, then you have a choice between how to do this type of work. It's retaining your quotation, right? If you want to keep the quotation the way it is, then you have to use escape character. This is your escape character, and there's 3 different ways of doing escaping in Java. So if you want to do double quote escape, then you have to use this right front of the double quotation. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I'm going to show you guys as an example first. And escaping is basically when you have a situation, an unusual situation like this one, where you have a string starting here and ending here, but inside of it you have quotation because your paragraph needs those quotation. You can escape it to say, okay, I would like to keep this quotation, but I'm going to use escape, which is right under your delete button, and you have to put right at the front of your double quote. So now if you print this, what's going to happen is that it's going to give you the right string. So this is a special situation where you have this, as you see, like it kept your quote correctly because you use skip, and we use that double quote. Skip is just this, right? So now double quote, skipping, and single quote is the same way. Okay, you just apply a single one in the front, And then this one, if you want to escape slash, if you have some slash in your code, then and you would like to escape it, you can do it this way. Okay. That means you would like to keep that in your program, but then you don't want the Java to understand this has a meaning. For example, if you remove those, your Java is like, okay, this is your starting, but where is the end? Is it this one? So it consider this one is the ending, and then it consider this one is the beginning of the next one right here. And this guy is by itself, that's what it thinks. And that's where Java's saying, oh, I don't know, you have a red, you have a problem. And now it will try to give you possible solution, right? This is an error. So just keep in mind, escaping is really is used when you have situations like this one. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Any question on escaping, guys? Special characters. You can escape also like this, for example, the single code, right? You have to put this slash in front of it, otherwise it's gonna think something else. Your program is gonna think it's like you're applying, you're basically having more than one, string or something, right? So the quotation can be skipped if you have a string that may have quotation already within your paragraph, right? That you don't mean to make it a string. Questions on this one? Is it something clear? Guys, be a little bit more interactive, right? It's good for you and for me, right? So I can kind of like move on to the next without waiting 5 seconds, right?
Yeah, it's pretty clear.
Clear? Okay, good. So this escaping is something is necessary for any programmer, and then you will find this escaping works for many programming languages. So C# will have the same escape. Ruby will have the same escape. You will be able to use Python. I believe Python, I wouldn't be 100% sure, but Python should have the similar escapes. Although in Ruby and Python, you don't really necessarily need escape. Instead of using escape, you can use single quote inside of, and this is true for Java as well. So if you don't like using escape, you can say outside is double quote, then I will use single quote inside. If the single quote outside, then you can use double quote inside for Ruby and Python. But in Java, single quote is used only for characters. So that's where Java becomes a little bit more difficult to work with, right? So just keep that in mind. You can use single quote inside for Python and other languages, but in Java there, it may represent something different when you do single quote.
/ give an error.
Hmm?
/ give an error, like that's the backslash. So if you do / would do error.
Yeah, / is just a character. It has no significance like this one, right? This slash is right under your delete button on the right side of your keyboard. All right, and then let's go into the math, right? So now, I guess like some of you guys, do you guys want to do math? I mean, I don't mind doing it. I think we already doing math because we are, creating some basic challenges into programming, right? So coding challenges includes math, right? And then the next challenge that I would like to do with you guys is called, and this is something actually gonna get you hired. And many companies out there that, they ask very similar questions. So if you can actually solve that next challenge, you can be very confident that so far you did very well, right? And we're gonna do much better, right? Okay, so math is basically just being able to plus and minus and things like that. And then, there are some built-in method that you can use. For example, mean will give you, from the value, you can find the lowest value. And then you have squared. Squared is for a square root of whatever. So you can say square root of 2 and whatever is the case. So there is a lot more for you to do, and instead of just doing plus and minus, you can actually use some of the built-in method from Java that provides. But let's go into the next one, Boolean. I'm sure we're gonna do these things when we write our code. For challenges, same thing for the Boolean. It's like yes or no, right, on and off. And we did this as a homework. And I would like to get past this to the next one. because we already, know what Boolean is, and we're going to use it in our program anyway, right? So math operation and this, we're going to use heavily onto the next challenge that we're going to write right after this lesson, right? Then we have if and else, right? So at this point, it's 1:24, guys. So I'm going to give you guys a small break. When you guys come back, we're going to finish all of this. Okay, we're going to finish if and else, switch statement, and then we're going to do our first coding challenge, and everybody's going to be required to do. Today's class is going to be a little bit lengthy because we're going to do the coding challenge together, number one, and we're going to see who's stuck and where, and try to help each other, try to get this through. So the next, do you guys need 20 minutes or 10 minutes to get a coffee or whatever?
Can we do 20?
20, okay. So it's 1:25. I will see you guys at 1:45, right? Come back, and then we're gonna finish this. And now, like, if you really think about it, if we finish this, we're done with fundamentals. After today, you can actually write meaningful programs. And we will do that at the end as a demonstration, and then all of us are going to work together on it. But then the next class, we're going into more like, big boss stuff, right? And this is where we're going to probably become more mature in programming language. But after that, we're going to learn automation. Is going to be literally like fast. It's going to be fast. Every day we're going to write automated tests because we already know how to do programming. And then we're done. We're almost done with the course. But not so fast because we still have to cover some tools and technology that we use at work, right? So then we're going to go more relevant to your work experience. But as you can see, you can probably see it through the finish line at this point if you really think about, you are able to get so far here. With that said, I don't want to take more of your time. You got the 20 minutes. Come back at 1:45, and then we'll start these topics. I will. Okay, so now if and else is basically a conditional statement. And we did this in our last class, I believe, but it's not broken down into each section and how we're going to be able to use this in our program. First of all, is everybody back?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me just take a glass of water. All right, so let's see, put it up. So if and else is basically conditional statement, and the block is basically if block. We have if block, we have else block, and we also have else if block, right? So if block takes a condition, and if this condition is true, only then it will execute code inside of that block, right? So the block starts here and ends it right here. So we're going to do something like that right now. And my initial explanation of if and else, let's look at it right here real quick. So we have if, we have else, and we have else if, and we have switch. Switch, we're going to do it separately because switch statement is used for different situations, and we're going to talk about those. And like I said, Java gives you all the tools that you need for you to be able to write your program. So first one, if you want to specify a block of code to be executed, else will be also executed if the condition doesn't meet. So if doesn't work for some reason, let's say if condition doesn't actually applies, then it will go into else. So if it's not true, obviously it's going to be false, right? So there is no ambiguity there. It will directly go into else. The other thing is else if it's basically if you have more than one if. So what if you have if and then if and then if, right? So you cannot say if, you can use else if more than once. Okay, just keep that in mind. And then we have switch statement, which is to specify many alternate block of code to be executed, but this one doesn't really uses the Boolean values. So the condition is always going to have to evaluate to a Boolean value, true or false, whatever condition you're putting it in. So let's give it some try and see how if and else will work. And if and else is probably along with the loops are going to be some of the highest usage in your test automation. So just keep that in mind that you have to get some solid understanding of how this works. So if and else starts with if block, right? And this is the condition. This is where we're going to say true or false. If it's true, only then it will execute the code inside here, right? So inside I can say like it's true, something like that. If it's not true, it will go ahead and execute this code. So it will not execute this if this is false. So now it will execute this line of code. So you just kind of see the control flow and how we can actually go ahead and manipulate our code to do something different when we have different situations. Okay, so just keep that in mind, the usage of if and else. But what if you have another one? And so before else, what if you have another one like this, else if requires a condition as well. So now if it's false is this, if it's true, for example, let's see, true, and then this is going to be true and this is going to be false. So the way if and else works is that it's like almost like a water pipe, right? Wherever is an opening, it will just do that and it's done, right? It's not going to go to the next one. So if, let's say, this is true, then it will execute this and it will be done, right? It will not do this one or that one. So for example, if this is false, then it will not execute this. Therefore, it needs to execute something, right? So it will go to the else if and check if it's false. Okay, that's also false, then it will execute this. Okay, so now let's do a little bit better than this. So I'm going to create another else if, and we're going to basically try to do something more than just if false and true and things like that. So if let's say 10 is more than 20, right? Then say, okay, I'm just going to write something executed 1. So I'm just going to give it a number so we can kind of see ourselves what's really happening. Executed 2, executed 3. So these are 3 different conditions. And lastly, executed else. Okay. So far, so good. Any question? 5 is more than, let's say, 2, right? And then we got the 4 is less than 1. 10 is more than 20. That is true. And then I'm saying end. Let's say 1 is more than 100. So what is the evaluation of this? True or false? The first one.
It's false.
False, right? Okay. So 5 is more than 2. Okay, 5 is actually more than 2. That is true. And then let's say true and false, right? Okay, so what's happening here? What is the evaluation of this?
I think also false too.
Guys, give me 1 second. Some people coming in to check out my house. 1 second. Give me like 2 minutes. I'm gonna just talk to them real quick.
What do you guys think? Is it true or false?
It should be false.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Because both condition need to be false.
Yeah, either or need to be true.
All right. Okay, so this statement, is it true or false?
False.
Why is it false?
Because one condition, both condition need to be false.
All right, guys, give me one more second. I got a real estate agent here. Gotta deal with them. I'll be back. Hey guys, sorry about that. So just to give you guys a little bit of idea, I have a house in PA, and I'm here today because there's real estate agents showing my house to sell. So I have to run around. All right, so let's go into the third condition, right? So this is going to be false because it's two different statements here, right? The first statement is 5 is more than 2. That is true. But then you're saying if you use and, right, just like any statement, you're saying this has to be true and this has to be true in order for this to be true. But if one of them is false, then it's false, period, right? What if I do something like this, right? True and then false, right? So all 3 statement has to be true before, you know, as a whole, basically. So you got the first one is true, the second one is true, and the last one is false. That's where we have a problem, right? So now the whole statement is going to be false. Okay. So this one is not going to execute. This one is not going to execute. And then the last one here, 4 is less than 1. It's already false, right? But what if I do something like this? This is called OR. This is AND and this is OR, right? So if I do it like this, and I say 5 is more than 1, sorry, 5 is less than 1, now is going to execute this, because why? This is false. The first one is false, but the second one is true. Okay, so you got the AND operator and then you got the OR operator. So OR works.
The or is said 5 is less than or greater than 1. It said less than 1.
5 is, no, sorry, 5 is more than 1, of course, yeah. So So you get two different operators at this point, right? This is AND and this is for OR. Any questions?
How you do or? Where's it on the keyboard?
Oh, this is pipe. This is called pipe. So you click on Shift, and then right underneath the delete button, there is a straight line looking /. That's if you hold Shift and then press that, you will get this scape. Oh, sorry, this pipe. So we call them pipe in programming. So if you have double pipe, that means it's an OR, right? So simply some language allow you to do this, right? Or some language allow you to do this, right? So, but in Java, this is the only way we can do OR, okay? So now we know that this is not gonna execute. Sorry, this is going to execute. So if I run it, and he's gonna say executed the third one, right? Yeah, so basically, if I do something like this now, and I say 5 is less than 2, now we add another condition. So we're saying these two are together now at this point. So you might as well just put it into a parenthesis. So you know these two are together. So you're saying this has to be true, or this whole thing has to be true. So in this case, the first one is true. The second one is false, right? 5 is less than 2 is, so now this evaluates to false. So now this is false and this is false, therefore it will go to else. Executed else, as you can see, right? So the level of complexity, or no matter what you're comparing, the return type always have to be true or false. It has to be true or false for it to take effect, right? So anytime this condition is true, it will execute. So is this the same thing? If this condition is true, then it will execute. And so is this. If this condition is true, then it will also execute. Otherwise, it will not execute it. All right, so that is your if and else statement. Any question for this condition, guys? Okay, and there is a shorthand if and else as well. So let's go into that real quick. There is a shorter version. What if you only have if and else and then done, right? If you have only two expression, if you're only doing this, so there is a shorter version like this way, right? It's called trinary operator. So these a specific trinary is being used when you have shorter version of if and else, right? If you have multiple if and else, obviously you want to use the traditional of the regular if and else statement. But if you do feel like, okay, you only have two condition, then you better off using the shorter version of it. And the shorter version is much simpler looking, but it might be a bit confusing looking, right? So you got the true and false expression here, and you got the condition right there. So if this condition is false, then it will basically it will execute this. If the condition is true, then it will execute this, right? That's how the trinary operator works. So if you look at this way, you have your condition right here. Time is right now 20. If time is less than 18, then is going to say good day or good evening, right? So now this, in this case, this is going to be false, right? If I go ahead and try this, and it says good evening, is because the time is obviously, this condition obviously is false, right? And so that's going to be how the trinary short version works. And any question? All right, so let's go into the next topic real quick. Before we go into the coding challenge, obviously we're going to finish all this. So any confusion about the if and else or trinary, how trinary works? Do you guys want to see an example? You guys can come in. There's a bathroom over there too, yeah.
Yeah, let's do the trinary.
Trinary, okay, so let's give it a try because does looks pretty confusing, even to me sometimes, but let's go ahead and look at it. So if you have a string, for example, so you're putting it into a specific, variable, but let's say, okay, so we're missing time at this point. So I'm gonna just create integer. Time is equal to, let's say, in this case, like I'm gonna say 17, which is less than 18, correct? If that is the case, and if I run this, time is less than, so 17 is less than 18, that is true. Now, we should expect to see this condition. The first condition is going to be for true, and the second condition, I guess, the second statement is for false, right? So if I run this, it should say good day at this point. Good day, right? So that is because you don't have else if, right? Trinary we use if we don't have more than, so in this case, you cannot use trinary, right? If you have only like two condition, like two different outcome of a condition, you can use this, a single line, just a single liner to do the same exact work. You don't need to actually do this whole if and else right here like this. In this case, you would have this, right? If you do it this way, or you can do it this way, which is much simpler looking, but the code is same, right? It does the same work, I would say. So two different usage at this point. Okay, so let's go to the switch statement next. So we learned trinary and if and else. The next one is switch statement. And what is switch statement? Switch statement is very similar to if and else, but instead of writing if and else, which takes Boolean as a condition, but in this case, it takes expression. It can be anything. It could be Boolean, it could be string, it could be integer. So it takes pretty much an expression to give you what you want, right? So let's say the expression. So let's give you guys an example of switch statement. So first of all, to give you a little bit of context on switch statement selects one of many code block to be executed, just one of many. So you have 20 code blocks. It will select one based on what you, what your expression is evaluating to. So that's something that you wanna keep in mind. So I'm gonna actually take an example from here to give you guys an idea about the switch statement or case statement. Okay, so let's take this as an idea. The way case statement works is that it takes the value itself. It doesn't care about the Boolean. It compares the value itself. So the structure of switch statement, you basically use switch keyword, and then there is a expression value that you have to put, right? The expression value is for now, let's say 4. So after that, you say case number 1. If it's 1, then do this and break out of the whole thing, right? If it's 2, do this and break out of the whole switch statement. And same thing for the remaining code block, depending on what you're inputting at this point, right? So in our case, let's do 2 and go ahead and run. Obviously, we need to get the output of this, right? Series. 1 second. Okay, so we gotta basically put this into we gotta go ahead and print. Oh, it is printing. Okay, my bad. So I didn't even see the print statement inside here. So now you can see 2 for Tuesday, right? So it is not saying, okay, if this is equal to true, or if this is equal to this. It works with pretty much any data types or any expression that you're giving. So now at this point, you have to decide what do you need for your program, because you have switch statement and you have if statement. If statement works with only Boolean values, and you have the switch statement that works with expression. So if your data that you're dealing with is not a Boolean, and it comes as it from the user itself, and it could be a number, it could be an integer, or it could be a string, And now these values are coming to you. And let's say you don't want to deal with Boolean. You don't want to say if this is more than this or less than this. You don't want to. You just want to say if name is John, then we want this. If name is David, then we want this. Whatever is the case, right? Then you should use switch statement, right? It's more efficient that way. You're dealing with value itself. You're dealing with the expression. But if you don't know what the value is and you want to do character count, you want to see if the value is equal to something, you know that the evaluation is going to be true or false, you can use if and else. But if and else is actually highly used. Switch statement is case by case. Again, what do you need for your program is decide based on efficiency, what will be more efficient for you to use, but both can do the same exact work. Alrighty, so both will be able to do the exact same work. You just have to choose between these two and say, okay, which one do you need for your program? Okay. Any question before we go into loops? Because loops is going to be a little bit more complex, right? And then we're going to go into array before we do our exercise. But loop is something is more, I would say, more like you'll probably have fun with. And then we need switch statement or if and else statement in order to go with the loop to do something more productive. Any questions with if and else?
No. Pretty clear.
No, okay. All right, cool. All right, good. Because right, like I said, fundamentals from here to here is fundamentals, and this should give you guys the ability to create something really, really meaningful in terms of code. So the next class, we're gonna probably see some of you guys wrote some meaningful code, right? Some of you guys actually create some real world program that will solve real world, problems. So just keep that in mind. The next thing is while loop. So the first thing is while loop, I guess. Switch statement is done. So what is a loop on the first place? Who here dealt with loop before? And if you haven't dealt with loop, I'm sure you guys watch movies. Whatever is the case, what does loop means to you?
Isn't loop is like they're looking for something and until they find that they keep going and going.
Yep. So loop is something is that it will continue to run the same way unless it reach a condition. If you provide a condition, there is a way to make the loop infinite? Yes, there is a way to make the loop infinite, and don't do it in your computer because your computer will crash. Okay, so if you write a program and it doesn't have a stopping point, it will continue to run until your computer no longer can process those requests, and it will crash. Okay, so just be careful with the loops as you're learning them. And obviously it's not going to fry your CPU or anything like that. It's just a single session it'll probably create, so it's going to be fine. You can restart and it'll be fine. But loop sometime is going to be dangerous. So let's say you forgot to break the loop, right? Then that's when it's going to create a lot of issues in your program if you're a programmer and you're pushing your code out there for a company. So just keep that in mind. The other thing is with the loop, we have multiple loops. So again, loop can execute a block of code. So it will execute some code as long as you want until you are satisfied, until you know something has reached or some condition has met, right? So it will continue to do this kind of work. And this is very handy because you don't want to like write 2 pages worth of code where you can just loop through them and be able to write it in 3 lines, right? So loop is very, very helpful. So for example, while loop throw a block of code as long as a specific condition is true. So if this condition is not true, it will continue to run until it's true. Okay, so let's go ahead and do something like this, right? As an example, right? right? So we're doing a while loop. Next, okay. So this is a while loop, but we didn't put a condition, right? So we don't want to say true because true is always going to be true, correct? It's never going to change. It's static. And now it's going to run. It'll probably crash my, IDE, and then I'll have to restart. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to say, let's say counter. So I'm going to say int counter is equal to 0. Okay. So I'm going to say as long as counter is less than 100. If counter is less than 100, then continue say something. So I'm going to just go ahead and say continue to say something like this. I'm going to say something like this, running 1 2 3. So it will just continue to say running something, right? So remember how we did string concatenations before earlier that we run. So what will it do? It basically go ahead and continue to run until it's 100. So I expect this to run 99 times. Now, somehow I have to increment this. Remember plus, plus, minus, minus. So every time it runs, I would like to add one to this 0. Okay. So I'm going to say counter plus, plus, right? And now what it will do is, like, after it runs this, it will add 1, and then it will continue to do that until maybe when it hits 100. That's when, yeah, when it hits 100, it will stop running my loop. So I'm going to run it real quick, this while loop. Before I run it, you guys know that these 2 line of code is going to run at least 99 times. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run this real quick, and let's see what's really is happening. So as you can see, it did run 99 times. It started from 0. So really, if you really count, all of them is 100. But it went all the way to 99 because 100 is not less than, the counter was 100. As soon as 100 happened, it stopped. Okay, it didn't even go through the code. Okay, it didn't even execute the code. Any question about your while loop? Crystal clear about the while loop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. This is going to come really handy into your next program that you write. Okay, there's other loops, for example, do loop as well. So we're going to do the do loop. Let's see. For loop. Let's go into the for loop real quick. So for loop and while loop is probably the highly used ones. So for loop in Java, we already seen it. There is 3 different part of for loop. So let's just quickly look into it. So statement 1, statement 2, statement 3. Statement 1 goes right here, okay? And then we know that we are ending our statement with a semicolon. Statement 2, semicolon, right? And statement 3, the last one. We already know plus plus means it adds 1 to, it just adds 1, increments it every time, right? So now number 1 statement is executed 1 time before the execution of the block. So this will execute 1 time before execution of this block. So once before, right? This one will execute, defines the condition for executing code block. So we're saying the next one is the condition, meaning this has a breakpoint as well, right? So this is where this condition, as long as this condition is true, then go ahead and run this line of code. And the last one is that you have a starting point, which is this, right? Your starting point was I was 0. So if I stays 0 all the time, then what's going to happen? This one will run infinitely because I is always 0. So we need to increment I by 1 if it finished running the first iteration. So each iteration we want to increment I by 1. So that's why we have I plus plus. So let's go ahead and write our own loop right here. It's called for loop. So for, and then we're going to say the first one is int I is equal to 0. That's where we're starting. The next one is I less than, let's say 10, and then I plus plus. So this statement is actually making the big difference because this is where the breakpoint is. So we're saying that keep incrementing I by 1, and this is the condition where it says as long as I is less than 10, keep running. So now because it's increasing this 1 by 1 at all times, this will go ahead and execute, right? This will basically execute until 9, so it's going to start with 0 and it's going to go up to 9 because I is changing its value as it executes. Okay, any question? So let's see how it is. I'm just going to go ahead and running, and then I'm going to say I at this point because the counter is I in this case. So in here, notice like I didn't say plus inside of the block because there is no need. It comes directly in the for loop. So this is never going to be a infinite for loop. So running for loop 1, 2, 3. So we should probably see 10 times, including 0. So that's going to go up to 9 right there, running for loop. Okay. So this is going to be your for loop, guys. Okay. So this for loop comes really, really handy if you are dealing with something that you will need the value of I. So you can keep your track. You can also use the number to do something with it because every iteration. So let's go ahead and actually iterate through. Okay. I'm going to pick you guys, one of you guys each. So let's say, okay. So the first iteration, right? Your loop starts with 0, right? I is 0. So the condition here, I is less than 10, is that true or false? The first iteration. So let's do 10. Let's do first iteration and write down what really the program sees in this case, right? The whole thing, what really the program sees, right? So let's see, I'm going to just write it down here. The number 1, first iteration. Block, this block is going to be 0. So we're starting with 0. The next one, true or false? This guy.
True.
True.
Okay, so true. And then this one, I plus plus, this just added I to 1. So we're saying I plus 1, right? So whatever is the value of I plus 1, that becomes is equal to 1, right? Okay. The next iteration, I is already 1. Okay, so we're saying, okay, let me just remove this. So I is already 1. If that is the case, is this condition true?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. Okay, so if that is true, let's move on. Then we're saying I plus 1. So if that is the case, what is the I plus 1 is equal to?
2.
2, right? Okay. All right, so let's go into the next iteration. So it might look really fast, but this is what the code is actually doing, one at a time. But it is fast, right? So then we starting with 2 because it was replaced at the end. All right. Is it still true?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the value of I plus 1?
It's 3.
3, right? Okay. So let's keep to all the way to 9, right? So now let's assume that we actually went through all of them, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're at 9. Okay, so we're at the 9th iteration at this point. So 9, and then we're saying 9 is less than 10. Is it true or false?
It's
True,
true.
right? Okay, and then the next one is I plus plus. So I plus 1 is equal to what? 10. Okay, so let's go to the next iteration. If it's 10, and then we're saying 10 is less than 10. Is true or false?
False.
False, right? So now this is where it's going to stop. This is the condition. It's not even going to the next one. It didn't execute anything. Therefore, you're only seeing 9. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's do like maybe like four iteration of this real quick. Okay. So same thing. First iteration, somebody explained to me. You starting with 0, counter is 0 the first time, right? And then if this thing is what? If this condition true or false?
True.
True.
Okay, and then we're saying counter plus plus, so we're saying add counter 1 plus 1, right? So we're saying whatever is there plus 1 is equal to,
1.
what is that value? 1, okay. Let's do the second one. Who wants to go to second one? You're starting with 1,
True.
the second run. So it's going to be true. And then what is the value? Counter plus 1.
Answer plus 1, 2.
2, right? Okay. Okay. Somebody tell me number 3. So you're starting with 2. So is that true still?
Yeah, it's true.
Counter plus 1 is equal to 3. Okay. So let's go to the number. So you're starting with 3, still true, right? 3 is less than 4. Counter plus 1 is 4. Okay. Let's go into the next one. You're starting with 4. Okay. Is this still true?
False.
False.
Okay, so counter plus 1 is 5. At this point, the condition is no longer satisfies, right? So since it's already false, it doesn't even care about going into and making that into 5. Got it?
Yeah.
So it doesn't even, yeah, it didn't even go through the code block. Remember, these has to be true for these code blocks to work. All right, so that's interesting, right? Because I think we are very close. We're very, very close, okay, to finish. So now we got the for each loop, the next one, right? For each loop is interesting also because there is, again, like I said, you guys get multiple tools. It's really, really up to you which one you have to use in order to make sure that you're doing it efficient amount of work instead of going around, right? So you got multiple tools in your drawer. You have to select which one is going to be the right one for you to use. So then we just covered while loop and we covered for loop, and there is another one. It's called for each loop. For each loop actually doesn't need a iterator. It doesn't really need somewhere for you to say like, okay, I would like to increment this or that, right? It doesn't really need that. So if that is the case, let's look at this example, how for each loop works. And then before even we do that, I think it's better we talk about the array first, right? But we'll talk about the array. Let's see, I think what makes sense, to be honest. Try to give you guys some extra leverage here, but let's finish the for each first, and then we go into that. So now we are looking at a string array called cars. Array means you have more than one items. It's a list. And what it does is that it stores value more than one. Okay, so you have 1 element, 2 element, 3 element, 4 element, right? Now array have different way of dealing with it. So since we're dealing with more than one item, in array we can actually count how many items there is. So now string I, you're saying cars. Cars is a list of item. So your code already knows that you want to put I as a value. Okay, so cars, and I'm gonna put like brand, for example, brand, right? This is so I'm creating a string variable called brand, and I'm saying cars is the variable. Take each one, and I'm using this loop to say I would like to, for each iteration, put them, make them brand, basically. So the first time it goes, brand is equal to value Volvo. The second time it goes, brand is equal to BMW, and the third time it goes, brand is equal to Ford. Fourth time it goes, brand is equal to Mazda. Okay, that's how it works. So that's going to print each one at a time if I actually run it right now. So you can see Volvo, BMW, Ford, and Mazda. It's printing one string at a time. It took the list and it basically went and print out one at a time. The reason why for each loop didn't need a some way to count where we are in the loop is because for each is designed to work with each one of them. It will not go beyond it. So this list has only 4 items, then it will work with the 4 items. So if we add another one, let's say Volvo, BMW, Ford, Mazda, okay, Lexus. So if we add Lexus to it and we run it, and it will only go up to Lexus, right? So for each loop has its own use cases that you can actually use that to be more efficient, instead of saying, why do you need to even create, like, for example, a counter and things like that if you're dealing with this guy. If you're dealing with an array, then you don't need to create yourself a you don't need to create the counter, right? So this code looks much more cleaner. It's probably better, right? Okay, so any question about for each loop, guys? Is it clear, or you need a little bit more clarification here?
It's good.
Okay, cool. All right. The thing is, guys, after this class, I would say go through, because it's no mystery. I'm not just reading off something, some secret book from here. This is available to all of you guys, right? If you want to be really good at programming and kind of get the fundamentals right, you should probably start from here and then all the way to finish, right? Couple times. I would say a couple times for you to really get better at it.
Yeah, I feel like when I was doing it, like it looks easy
Mhm.
looking at you, but then when I was doing
Mhm.
it, it just kept getting red, like just red markers.
That's totally fine, because when you get the red, every time you get the red, tell yourself you're learning, because you're making mistakes, and then that mistake shouldn't happen again. We should make only mistake once or twice, right? Like if you make a mistake again and again, and you expect for a good result, it's just, it's insanity. So, you have to make mistakes, otherwise you're not going to learn anything, especially programming. You have to make mistakes. Okay, so with that said, let's go into array, and then we're going to do a programming challenge at the end of the array, and then we're going to be done. So array is basically just used to store multiple values in a single variable. So as you can see, we want string, and you put the square bracket to resemble an array, and you define cars, and then you have multiple brands under the same car as a value. So you basically, it's like a temporary memory at this point, right? It is where you store information temporarily, and then you use it later, whatever you want to do, right? That's how you will be using array. Array can be integer, for example, this array could be a string, and then you have to be able to access these elements. So for example, if you want to get the value of Ford, right? So let's say you want to get, for example, let's say you want to get the last item in your array, right? So all you have to do, this is called array access. So all you have to do, let me just go ahead and do a print here. You don't have to loop through it. You can say, let's say you want to get the last item. You can, or the, let's say first item, right? First always going to be 0. So you're going to say cars, and then you will say 0. That's it. That's going to give you cars, right? What if you want the second item on the list, cars.1, because remember index value starts from 0. So you're going to get both values. So you'll be able to access your array. And accessing array, the code complexity is very easy, because it is quite fast. You know exact location and what you want. So it's going to be, the runtime of this is almost instant. There is no delay. Now, the runtime for this is different, right? It's called O to the n square, right? And that is more on the computer science side, and maybe one day we'll cover this and teach you guys how the code complexity works. Meaning, like, you can actually give me a calculated time how long a program will take to run, right? This is called code complexity, or runtime of a specific code. That if you are looking to get a job in Facebook, Google, Twitter, then these are the type of question they will ask you, like, okay, you did this, tell me how long it will take to execute this based on these values right here. You would be able to do it from your own memory, because you learned the code complexity, and this is more on the computer science. So anybody finished computer science, I don't know if anybody did actually computer science school. If you did it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're talking to developers, if you're talking to somebody who actually knows programming that well, they know what you're talking about. So at some point you will have to have that computer science mindset. So my recommendation would be, it's called Big O. That's the subject in computer science. In this subject, you learn really code complexity, how long it takes and things like that. But I don't think you guys are ready just yet. So at some point we'll cover that. But think about you for now, fundamentals, right? Just one at a time. Don't want to get yourself overwhelmed. Once this is finished, you can call yourself at least a entry-level developer. Entry-level, somebody who actually just looking to gain more skill sets into programming. Once this is done, we're going to go more and more advanced: encapsulation, polymorphism, inheritance. These are like the 4 pillars of programming, at least OOP. And then there's a lot more, right? We can, so like I said, we're going to probably go all the way up to maybe like, we're going to cover some of these items here, and then we're going to leave the remaining for yourself if you want to do more and more advanced and get better and better and better yourself, right? But we're going to do just enough for us to be able to go and automate and be able to at least write code and understand what we're writing. So just keep that in mind. So you can actually continue, but we're gonna left off at some point somewhere here. Okay, so now that we understand what array is, right, and we can access an array, we can also do multiple things to with an array, right? So for example, if you want to change the value of a specific element, all you have to do is you have to use the assignment, and you have to then provide what do you want to change. So in this case, you can say, I want to change the car's value 0 to Opel. It will go ahead and change it, and then you can actually print out everything from the cars. And I think this one is printing already, so we'll see what happens, right? So Opel should be now, instead of Volvo, it should be Opel right there, you see. It's no longer a so Volvo. The first one before this line executed, Volvo was there, right? But it got replaced by Opel because that's what you said, right? So that's how you would be able to also replace a value within your array. Right now, you're not seeing the use cases of array, but that is going to be highly usage on your side when you are writing this program. Okay, so that is array for you guys. Now there's multidimensional array and all of that. So we'll leave multidimensional for the next time. I think this is a little bit more, it deserves a little bit more time for you guys to spend. But now everybody open your, and this code should be done in like 10-15 minutes, a challenge, right? So we're gonna do it all together. I'll think about it. I'll basically give you guys what I'm thinking when I'm writing this code. So go ahead and create a new class and open your IntelliJ, and then write so this was even number. So we're gonna say reverse string challenge, right? Okay, so that's what you're gonna write. So this is gonna be what I want you to do, and I'm gonna write it here first. Let's go ahead and get yourself a main method here to begin with. And I'm gonna see, once you guys are done, let me know, but I'm gonna basically walk you guys through. I'm gonna go ahead and write some comments here in the beginning to tell you guys what's really what I want. So I want is gonna be string name is equal to your name, right? So you enter your name in here. Once you do that, I want you to reverse your name. Okay, that's it. That's all I want you to do using code. Don't use the method. Java has a dot reverse method, for example. So let's say I will do this. I don't want you guys to be doing this. So my name is, let's say at this point, Jewel. Okay, so now if I do something like this, dot reverse. And it will work. I think dot reverse, they take it out. I don't know if they did. Okay, more action. Okay, so don't use any method, guys, when it comes about reversing this. So tell me if you're up to this much, and everybody raise your hands or give me a thumbs up that if you're up to this much, at least you created a new class. And let's not spend too much time because these are basics, right? Anika did it already. So keep raising your thumb and I'll know who didn't do it.
I did it.
So new. Okay. Keep going, guys. Just give it thumb. So it's basically, I can track it here. Who did and who didn't. All right. Saif did it. Nor did it. Okay. Who else? Okay. Mukta did it. All right. Some of you guys didn't do it because I don't see any fingers. Thumbs up, basically. All right, guys. So let's be honest. Who didn't do it? Just go ahead and tell me why, and then we can move on because I don't want to take more than 10 minutes for this coding challenge. Anybody's having struggle here? All you have to do after the homework you did, all you have to do is create a new class with the obviously uppercase letter called reverse string challenge. And all I want you to do is, string, you're just creating a string variable with your name, first name, last name, maybe put a space for last name as well, Okay, so only a few people, I mean, only like 3 or 4 of you guys did it, and there are a bunch of you guys. So Afseen, you didn't do it. Arafat, you didn't do it. Evelina, did you do it?
Actually, I wasn't here.
Yes.
Just, sorry,
Okay. Oh, you did it. Okay. Okay, Arafat, you did it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's why we're delaying the class because we're not responding to the question. So just let me know, because this requires for you guys to listen to me carefully so that way we can finish in the 10-15 minutes. I'm gonna walk you guys through the code, but most importantly, I would like your input as well. So just be engaged, split your screen so you can also do this parallel. And now this is the string that you are taking in, and then you have to go ahead and reverse every single character, right? So now give me a thought process. Anybody here will give me a thought process how you can do that. But remember, we can take one character at a time from our string out. Remember, we also have, so we have few tools out there. We can find the length, right? This is one. We can find the length, how long it is, right? If we can find the length, then we can say, okay, well, I can use a loop to take one character at a time, right? From here, and I can just put them in the front, keep putting it in the front until it's already reversed, right? But then I can use a for each loop, right? Because that the decision I can even use a loop for loop as well if I want to. So I can use it for each loop, because what's gonna happen is that it's gonna run until however many we have. Or I can use for loop because the length, I can use the length to say my condition, right? My condition is, I can say if name dot length, let's say I is less than that, then continue run, right? I can say that, right? That's the second tool that we have a choice. Now that we're going through each character at a time, instead of printing it, we can basically say, okay, now I will like the L first, right? I will like the last one, then I will like the, you know what I'm saying? So I can actually go from the last, from the character, and start printing it in the front to do the reverse of this. So there is more than one way for us to do it, this specific challenge. Now, someone here give me, like, you don't have to, this is called pseudocode, right? Pseudocode means like you're not actually writing code, it doesn't really work, but you can actually give me in details what your plan is about this challenge. So I'm gonna give you guys 30 seconds to think about and then tell me like your solution. I gave you guys some idea and then we move on and I implement that idea. So you guys come up with the idea now. All right, 30 seconds is close to done. Who wants to give me some ideas, guys? When we iterate, right? Like, well, let's look at the for loop real quick. Okay, so you got the for loop up and running. And the first thing is that int I is equal to, let's say, something, right? 0, right? 0. So you're going from, if you say 0, that means 0 is the first character, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're going this direction, then obviously, you know, you're really, you know, you're not being very efficient in here because now you have to think, okay, what is the opposite of this? Like the other direction. So if I do something like this, if I want to go the opposite way, I want to start from here, right? If I wanted to start from here, I can say name is the I is equal to name dot length. Okay. All right. So name dot length, and then I can say, hold on a second. Why is it right? Okay. Name dot length, and I can say -1, right? So name dot length will give me what, guys? So what is the number name dot, what is the value of this now? Name dot length, what is the value before reducing and reducing 1? Who wants to tell me? What is the
4.
4.
who said June? Length, you guys remember we covered this like earlier for a reason, right? Because we're gonna use it here. So somebody said it's gonna give me total 4. So it's gonna say 1, 2, 3, 4. If you do -1, then I is equal to what? To begin with, I is equal to what?
3.
I is equal to 3. Okay, fine. So fine, 3, right? So it's gonna be 0, 1, 2, 3. That's exactly what we needed, right? Okay. So now that you did this, the next thing you have to do is that where you have to put a condition. So if you say I, as long as I is more than or equal to 0, then continue to run. Okay, because we want to run as long as I is more than or equal to 0, correct? Because we're going from the reversed at this point. Okay. The next thing we want to do, because we're getting the first character right here. The next thing we want to do is that we want to say I minus minus, because why is that, right? Because I minus minus is because you're starting with 3. Then the next iteration, we want to say 2. We want to say then 1, and then we want to say 0, correct? Okay, so each iteration where if you pick a character from each iteration, you now have you know, you now have basically a reversed value, right? But before we can even do that, right, we need to make sure that this gets chopped into character. We have to chop it at this point, right? So in order to chop it into character, I can say CAR. Remember CAR data type? How many people remember? chopped name is equal to, okay, name dot. So I'm gonna say there is a method. This is something that you don't have to learn. You just have to know what that does. This creates a character, right? So basically, what am I missing? Am I missing this? Yeah, that's it. Okay. So what I just did, I took the name and I chopped it into a single character. So the job of this code is to say something like this. It's gonna give you something like this in return. Single quote J, single quote U, right? And then single quote E, and then single quote, because it's character, right? So single quote L. So now this guy, chopped name, contains this at this point. This is what we have right now. Okay, so I already converted into character, right? So now what I have to say, because it's a character, we have to use the chopped name, not the name, right? So chopped name this, and then let me see what's the method called expected. Okay. Ch dot length, not this one. Okay, length. There we go. This is where the mistake is, because like if you use a string to find length of a string, you have to do this, but to find a length of a array, it's not gonna. So this is the return type of this is array. Okay, so all the characters were splitted at this point into their own characters. Okay, and now I can say simply, I'm gonna create a new array, or I'm going to create a new string if I want to, right? So now I can say string. I'm going to create a new string, and I'm going to say reversed, right? Name is equal to, for now is nothing. Okay, I'll leave it empty. This is empty for now. So I'm going to just keep adding to it. So now at this point, what I can do is very simple. I'm going to say reversed, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say plus equal to the first character, whatever character we're getting, right? So I'm going to say the chopped name. So it's going to keep adding to the right there. So it's going to keep added to this guy, right? And it's going to keep added until it's done. And then lastly, I can say, okay, you know what? I want to print it out at this point. So I'm going to say system dot out dot print ln. So even if you didn't understand this, I want you to try this again and again until you understand what's really happening behind. You have to be able to explain to me what happened here, right? So now I can just say, okay, I want to see what happened to my name, right? So these were just brainstormer, so we'll just remove those excess stuff. And if I run this right now, this challenge should actually give me, so I'm going to go ahead and run it real quick and see what just happened. And as you can see, my name was successfully reversed, LEUJ. So you will, not only that you will be able to do this challenge, you'll also know in reverse how your name sound like. And you know, this is something that you did in your code at this point. Now I'm going to explain a little bit more before I end the class for the day, and you guys can expect a homework at least by tonight. And it'll be similar challenges that you're going to get, that you'll have to kind of solve it, and nowhere in the internet you'll find it, because we're going to try to give you as challenging as possible in terms of looking at this and finding a solution. So a few things happened. We got the string. This is the string that the interviewer gave you to reverse. You take that and you said, okay, how can I do this? You know what? I'm going to chop it into multiple section, right? And if you're going to do it multiple section, there is no better tool than using this method, right? This method creates an array from a string by chopping each character into their own space, right? They become their own element. So now you got multiple item in your array. We also learn in array, we can actually go ahead and iterate through the array, and we can also basically get the value of each array by using index number. Okay, so since we're getting it from the last, remember this word where the first time is running is 3, correct? So let's, I guess, do the iteration now since we already explained those. So the first time this for loop is running, what is I? So so I is equal to the first time we're running. What is I is equal to? So one of you guys do one loop and then we're going to continue for the all four. So only 4 people will have this opportunity to explain each loop. So first person wants to go.
4.
So you are saying this whole thing is equal to 4, right?
Yes.
Why?
Joe.
Do your math. Do your math though, right? So you're saying length of this, and then you're saying a -1 is going to be 4.
No, 3.
3. Okay, so that's 3. Then you go to the next one. This is the condition, and this condition allows this to run. So you're saying 3 is in here. 3 is more than or equal to 0. Is that a true or false?
True.
It's a true. Okay, so now it will execute, right? It'll run. Okay, fine. It'll go to the next one. You're saying I minus minus. So now I was 3, right? And you're saying -1 because incrementation happens with 1, right? By default. You can also change that. You can say I want I to be incremented by 2 or 3. But in this case, by default, it's going to do it 1. So 3 minus 1 gives you 2. Next iteration, who wants to explain? The next iteration, the next run of this loop. Who wants to explain the next iteration, guys? What is the value of I, the next iteration? What is the value of I?
2.
Guys, by now, I think we know each other, right? So you guys know me and I know you guys. So try to be more interactive. You don't have to, you don't have to just, not speak. Some of you guys don't speak at all. So just speak out. It's gonna help you. Also, it's gonna help me to understand if everybody's getting the right ideas. So I is what?
2.
2 and Y is 2.
Is it the -1, 3 minus 1 is 2.
So initial number change because there is a decrementation happening, right? Decrement by 1. So therefore it is 2. So 2, if this is 2 and if it's more than equal to 0, is that a true or false?
True.
Okay, true. Okay. So the first iteration, so when this first iteration happened, the end result was printing is we're saying we want it from this shop name, we want the I. So if I'm saying that give me the position, the first time was 3 was the position of the I, right? The I was 3. So if I say shop name 3, give me 3, what am I asking for? What is the value I'm asking for?
Should be
It's a very small name, guys. Come on.
Yeah, L.
It's a very L, because L, what is the position of L at this point?
is 4. I mean, it's yeah.
It's 4, but then your I is 3.
Yeah,
You're
it's
saying the
3.
first time. So then what is the position of L?
L is 0. I mean, L is 4. The I is 3 is E. Supposed to be E.
Okay, so you didn't listen when I say what index value, how index value works. How is this L is 4? Explain to me from the so each one of the character explain to me what are the
Actually, never mind. I remember. So J is supposed to be 0. So 1, 2, 3. So L is 3.
Okay.
That's
So look right here, line number 13, what it did, it says I'm going to take this string and I'm going to make it into smaller elements. So the first elements is going to be first character is J. Okay, and then the next character is U, and the next character is E, and the next character is L, right? So L is lowercase, so it's going to take it as is. So this is what it returned. Chop name is equal to this at this point. Now in an array, index value start from 0. In a string, and index value starts from 0. So no matter where you look at, it's going to start from 0. So what I'm saying, what is the value of L?
It's 3.
3. So here you're saying that you would like to take this guy and put it in here empty. So the first time it runs, this is empty to begin with. It's nothing. So after the first iteration, we're saying give me the position of I. So I is, if I is 3, that means it's going to give you return L, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now L is already done after the first iteration. L is there. Okay, the next iteration, you're doing the next iteration, right? So next iteration, you said true, so it's going to execute. Then we're saying you started with 2, so 2 minus 1 is equal to 1. So you are saying you want to get the positions on the second iteration was 2, right? This was 2. So the position of 2, what will it print? What will it actually take from here? E, right? Because that's the 2, 0, 1, 2, right? So now you go ahead and put E right there, okay? Okay, let's go into the third iteration. And it's going to continue to run until it's satisfied, right? This person has to be satisfied. So now I is equal to what this time?
1.
1, okay. All right, 1 is more than equal to, what am I doing? Okay, more than or equal to 0. Is that true or false? False or true?
True.
Okay, so this is true. All right, then you are saying I minus 1. So that means you previously had 1. 1 minus 1 is equal to 0, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now you were at the position 1 anyway. You are still at the 1 because you didn't complete the whole loop. You're still running this code. So you're printing what at the position 1?
U like umbrella.
Okay, so U. So far 3 iteration completed, right? And we are still going to the next one. Okay, so let's see where we can stop. So I is at this point what? Starting point right here, this guy.
0.
Okay, 0. 0 minus 0 is 0, right? Right?
Yes, it's gonna be false.
Okay, so now so now tell me 0 is more than or equal to 0, true or false?
False.
Why is it false?
It's true because it's equal to.
There is, I mean, we've been doing all this, right? All of them had the same condition, more than or equal to. So 0, is it more than or equal? So true, right? Because it's still 0 is 0, right?
Equal to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. So now you're saying 0 minus 1. So is yeah, so decrement 0 minus 1. And then so 0 minus 1 is minus 1, correct?
Zero minus 1 is
-1.
zero.
And it prints out for the
-1.
or capital
Yeah,
J.
if it's not -1, if it's not -1, a lot of people's code is about to, I mean, by now it would be chaos, right? So -1. This one thing, if you change the law of how math works, is going to be really, really crazy for a lot of people. But anyway, so you got the -1, but you started with 0 as an I. So -1 happened at the end right here, but your code now still have I as 1, okay? So now you will say print the position of 0, because you started with 0, right? Your I was 0 in the beginning of the loop. So what is the 0
It
will
will
print out
print J.
of the location? J, right? Uppercase J. That's what happened within the 4th iteration. So this is like a single line code that actually solved the problem of called reverse a string. This is one of the highly asked interview question out there. Sometimes you'll end up writing like half a page of worth of code to reverse this simple string, right? But this is probably the most efficient way that I've seen so far how this works. You just start with a reversed iteration. Instead of starting from 0, you start from the last one. We already know how to get the last one of this guy right here once we convert it into an array, right? We can even know the last one by looking into the string itself. So we could have just worked with string, but then it will be harder for us to do, adding to the string, that way, right? Since that we decided to split it into characters, and it's probably a better way to do it, better way to handle. Okay, so that's the explanation of your coding challenge. Right now it's 3 or 6. It was a very extensive class. Guys, again, like I said, if you miss the homework, at least the coding homeworks for the next few classes, you're gonna really suffer heavily on automation. And if you also don't do your practice at home, so like I said, you don't even have to ask me. I would say we just finished from here to here. If you feel like you're not confident about explaining this to me or somebody that you know, then you want to at least go through a few times. It's going to take you half an hour to go through each one of them, one iteration. So I would say let's go for a couple iterations to make sure that you feel confident. And then the next classes that we're going to do is just advanced. So we're not even going to talk about what is a string. We're not going to even talk about what is a variable. We're not even going to talk about switch statement or if and else. We're just going to use it, right? So you're going to feel like, whoa, wait a minute, but you didn't tell me how this, that's why you're going to have to be really, really solid. You have to be really solid from here to here. And then this will be piece of cake when we really become solid with this once. So my request to you guys, even if it's a homework or not homework, don't do it last minute. Don't do a last minute programming, guys. That shows that you really don't care, right? It's just not gonna be working out for you. It's not gonna work out for you. I'm telling you, you are gonna go and fall off to the next badge or something because you're not really utilizing, you're not doing time management correctly, right? Last minute homework is always shown to be, either copy pasted. Sometimes it's just really not a well-written answer. Sometimes it has a lot of grammatical errors, spelling errors, and things like that. So, just do yourself a favor because this is for you. It proves nothing. Like, let's say somehow you didn't make it. We're still going to have a next badge. We're still going to work with next sets of people, right? It really, really is for you. It has nothing to do with us getting a medal for, being able to help you, right? It's not really, we're not really, we can only push you to make sure that you are successful, right? And we want to mentor you to the right direction. That's what we can do. But if things are not happening from your side, at some point, anybody will come and give up on you, right? So my my immediate action, at least for you guys, will be, at least if I was you, is that spend a lot of time, because programming is not an easy thing to learn. So do go ahead and just practice as much as possible. So this is, again, one place you can go to, or you can even go to YouTube. And there is a plenty of developers, if you don't want to learn from a QA guy, you can actually go to YouTube and find maybe somebody who has more developing experience, who's going to be able to explain even better, maybe more to the taste that you would like, right? So at least you can learn the basics. Once you're done, then you can come sometime and correct me if I'm like writing a piece of code, and maybe you can help me through the code once you really have the knowledge. But if you don't do time management correctly, at least from at this point to now, you're going to suffer, and we're basically going to know by looking at your homework, your performance is really not gonna be as good. And we also don't want people to just last minute run it, go and find some code somewhere, go ahead and write, copy paste it, or even write it without understanding it, and then do your homework. We don't want that, because at the end of the day, you're really not helping yourself, because when you're out there looking for a job, you're the one who's going to face the interview, and we're going to basically, see your abilities on the day one, right? Day one of your interview. So let's not do that. Just like I said, do the right thing. You'll be fine. The other thing that I will tell you, once you get on the job, you will not learn programming, period. Once you get on the job, if your company determines that you're a manual tester because you don't have programming knowledge, even if they hired you and they somehow feel like you don't have the programming knowledge, they will put you into manual testing. They're not going to be really going to go through firing and things like that, because you already got hired, and there is plenty of work. There's a place for everybody in a team. So now you're going to end up doing things that are more manual, and now you don't have time to learn programming because you don't do anything in programming. And now you're stuck in that position without doing programming. The moment you lose your job, you're not going to get another job. It's that simple, because nobody wants to hire a manual tester. They want to hire a automation tester who can do manual, both, right? So if I'm a company, it only makes sense I hire an automation guy, and maybe that person can do manual, and then when we need it, they can do automation. And that's the mindset of every single manager at this time. So like I said, do yourself a favor, learn programming. Trust me, some of you guys, or if you're interested to become a developer, this is the way to go. You cannot become a developer on day one, right? So this is like your starting point. We will help you put your foot in the door, and then from there on, you can increase your skill sets, and at some point you'll be a developer, maybe within a year and a half, while you're getting paid. That's the beauty of this. With that said, guys, I wish you guys have a good Saturday and good weekend, and look out for homework tonight, and I'll see you guys on Tuesday.
All right.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Enjoy the weekend.
Bye-bye.